art history event, and pretty good. Normally not having two art history events in 1 week. This is a punch card event, so for those of you who are here for credit, you can scan the punch card code at the entrance desk in the lobby of Peeler. So excited to have all of you. And this is also, Paulina and I participate in a network of researchers called WINYAI. And what WINYAI does is transmit events about colonial Latin American art. And so that group will be able to ask questions via Zoom chat after you all have answered your questions. So Paulina, you can choose from the chat what questions. And I have the distinct honor of welcoming a friend and colleague, Paulina Vargas. Paulina Vargas is a PhD candidate in Latin American Studies at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, UNAM, and holds a master's in Latin American Studies and a BA in International Relations. She has dedicated herself to the study of the cultural history of Latin America in general and Latin American art in particular. Paulina has a wonderful edited volume, which was published in 2023, called Interviceregal Relations in America, 1521 to 1821. Spanish title is Relaciones Intervirreinales en América, 1521 hasta 1821. And has many more publications in the works. Paulina is here to talk to us about her research on the relationships between colonial Mexico and colonial Peru. So please join me in welcoming Paulina to the stage.
Good evening to everybody. I would like to thank to Dr. Joseph Albanese for this invitation and confidence, and the support of the Department of Art History at DePaul University. Welcome to everybody, and we can start. So, this talk is titled Interviceregal Relations in the Americas, Art and Politics in Circulation. We are going to okay, yeah. This is the table of contents. I will try to make it easy, but if you have any questions, please, at the end of the talk, we can share our points of view. And so, first, globalization. Yep. Globalization began with the maritime explorations between the 15th and 16th centuries. It initiated the consolidation of the capitalist systems by allowing cultural and economic interconnections between Europe and the rest of the continents. It was also the beginning of the circulation of art and politics between all the regions of the world. Historically, the transits that occur from Europe to the Americas and vice versa, or from Asia to Europe and the Americas, have been studied. But what about the circulation that occurred between the American territories? That is the topic of this talk. And then, two, polycentric monarchy. As a first point, I would like to point out that this talk is part of the proposal of a polycentric monarchy as opposed to the colonial paradigm. And I just have heard, Joe, that you talk about Mexico colonial and Peru colonial, and this is another proposal, theoretical proposal. So, as opposed to the colonial paradigm, which maintains that the kingdoms that make up the Spanish monarchy emerged as a conglomerate of competing centers, unstable in their overall political definition and hierarchical positions among themselves. This means that each city in the Spanish Empire was important in different ways while having a common shared governance. This existence of different interconnected centers under the command of the king presents them as multi-territorial entities that include various territories on 3 continents. Therefore, the viceregal government was a historical and cultural category between the 16th century and the independence movements in the 19th century. This category derived from the legal status of the territories granted by the crown. Encompasses the diverse nature of the Americas over 3 centuries. Although the annexation of these territories was carried out through wars of conquest, once the main battles were concluded, the creation of legal and bureaucratic structures was necessary to regulate and govern them, and ensure submission to royal authority. These structures were modified depending on the period and subject matter, like governed territory, rights and obligations of subjects, protection against attacks, trade, construction of ecclesiastical, educational, or artistic sites, exploitation of natural resources, etc. In this sense, the relations that existed between the viceroyalties of the Americas are not presented here as intercolonial in nature, as these territories are not conceived as colonies. That is, some foreign territories subjected to political domination almost exclusively direct toward economic exploitation, carried out by metropolitan capitalists for the benefit of the economic and military power of the nation state.
So sorry, she said that you can't see the PowerPoint in the
You
projection.
can see, okay.
So I just want to make sure everyone can see this.
Gracias, profesor, porque aquí estamos viendo solo la primera diapositiva y profesora Paulina.
Uh,
Ahí vemos Polycentric Monarchy.
¿Ahí cambió?
Cambió en Polycentric Monarchy, pero se ve aún el modo diseño y no se ve aún el modo proyección.
Vamos a solucionarlo. Ok.
Okay.
Salte.
Okay.
A ver.
Sorry.
No, está todo bien. De hecho, perdón por interrumpir.
No, está bien, pero quiero detenerlo, espera. Ok. ¿No? Otra vez. No está conectado. Muevo. No me deja agarrar la pantalla, Joe.
Ya llegó la tía María Elena. Sí,
Yeah.
a ver, llámala.
Okay.
Pues, va a ser-
PowerPoint slideshow.
¿Qué tal ahora?
¿La hora? ¿Por acá?
No, ¿qué tal ahora? Que si ya se-
Perfecto. Intervice-regal relations. Perfecto. Flows, ties, communications. Se ve excelente.
Ok.
Maestra, por favor, la escuchamos. Profesor Elbanis también. Silencio por acá mi micrófono.
Okay.
Thank you. So
Thank you
sorry.
for your patience. Yeah.
Okay. I lost my paper. Okay. So where I was talking about colonial, yeah. Okay. Ya no la puedo cambiar.
Oh, okay. See. Yeah, it's
No,
working.
but I need to change this. Okay. Maybe. Victoria. Estamos.
Perfecto, Paulina. Polycentric monarchy.
Okay. So,
Okay.
I start this paragraph. So, in this sense, the relations that exist between the viceroyalties of the Americas are not presented here as intercolonial in nature, as these territories are not conceived as colonies, but rather as a distinct category, viceroyalties, kingdoms that were part of the Spanish imperial system with the same legal status and different political and economic realities. 3. So, what are interviceregal relations? Interviceregal relations are understood as those flows, ties, communications, transfers, and interactions that exist between individuals and communities of civil, ecclesiastical, or administrative nature in the viceroyalties governed by the Spanish monarchy between the 16th and 19th centuries, as well as the cultural influence that result from these interactions. This includes primarily, but not exclusively, those related to correspondence, government ordinance, and the travel of civil and religious authorities, trade, its actors and regulations, the inhabitants, families, and networks that were formed and mobilized, the artistic and academic manifestations, as well as the traditions, rites, and devotions that circulated. 4. What is the legal and economic framework within which circulation between the viceroyalties operated? During 3 centuries of Spanish rule, interviceregal relations in the America had different characteristics, conditioned above all by the regulations of the crown. They can be divided into 3 periods. The first one, between 1536 and 1631 to 34, when the first 2 great viceroyalties, New Spain and Peru, were established. During this time, relations were free and constant until the crown, realizing that it was losing commercial and economic preeminence to New Spain due to its geopolitical position, decided to prohibit direct relations between the viceroyalties of the Americas. The second, between 1634 and 1774, a period of royal prohibition on interviceregal relations in the America. Trade operated under extraordinary circumstances, that is, when authorized by the crown, there was also illegal trade. For example, a constant smuggling focused primarily on goods from Castile and China, cocoa, quicksilver from Huancavelica in Peru, wines, oil, and tobacco. There was also an influx of unauthorized persons. And 3, the third and last period in relation to trade in the viceroyalties was between 1774 and 1821 to 24. This was a period of gradual reopening to free transit and trade. Political circulation. The history of the viceroyalties cannot be studied as if it were a monolithic and static phenomenon that functioned the same way for 3 centuries. On April 17, 1535, the title of Viceroy and President of New Spain was granted to Don Antonio de Mendoza in Barcelona. The American viceroyalties were born with a bureaucratic organization that was modified and enriched over the years. It wasn't until the governments of Francisco Toledo for Peru and Martín Enríquez de Almanza for Mexico or New Spain that the monarchy understood that the way to consolidate its presence was to achieve a strange balance between consensus and authority. Both viceroys pursued a centralizing program organizing the administrative structure of the viceroyalties, distributing office, award favors, and laying the foundations of a courtly society. In this way, viceregal power was definitely established. Thus, by the mid-16th century, its administrative structure was already consolidated, and the power of the conquistadors and encomenderos had been eroded. Encomenderos, they are like feudal lords, but with the obligation to teach religion to the indigenous people. So, what should we take into account to explain political circulation among the American territories? The circulation I have studied has been that which occurred between the main viceroyalties. This does not mean that it did not exist between the viceroyalties created following the Bourbon reforms, or that authorities moved between the various captaincies. It does mean that this is a pending task for young researchers. Please. The American bureaucratic structure. The great organizational system of the American territories of the Spanish Crown began with the Royal and Supreme Council of the Indies, which carried out legislative, administrative, judicial, and military activities. It was followed by the House of Trade of the Indies, based first in Seville and then in Cadiz, and then in Seville again. Its central functions were the regulations of trade and navigation between the peninsula and America, providing captains with the appropriate instruments and training, and collecting all information about the routes from them. In America, the viceroy was responsible for administering and governing on behalf of the king, but he did not have all the powers. Along with him, for the development of the administration were the royal courts, called audiencias, the highest judicial court that had civil, criminal, and even ecclesiastical jurisdiction due to the complex relationship between the Spanish crown and the clergy. Its central objective was to reaffirm the supremacy of the king's justice over that of the governors, governorships, over that of the governors. Governorships, the governor enjoyed powers of government and justice. Depending on the time, he had the authority to entrust or distribute indigenous people and lands. And if the territory required it, he held the military command called Capitancy General. The following, the corregimientos, which were bodies designed to govern cities and administer justice in the regions that depend on the king. However, the corregidor or chief justice did not have military command. The main duty of the corregidors was to promptly execute the orders of the council. Finally, the cabildos were the body that ensured the proper functioning of the cities. They were composed of mayors or municipal judges and councilors or aldermen. The government of the Habsburgs in America meant the administration of a territory that around 1700 reached around 14 million kilometers between various and sometimes successive government bodies, encomiendas, viceroyalties, governorships, courts, and captaincies. Although the Hispanic territories in Europe already constituted an initial set of important centers for the monarchy's activity, their polycentric development reached its climax with the establishment of the American viceroyalties. The second thing that we have to learn about this is the cultural mediators, viceroys, and subsidiary courts. This process of establishing the viceroyalties was part of the development of globalization. Again, the first point, through which cultural elements were brought into contact. Ultimately, interviceregal relations were not carried out between ethereal institutions, but through the flesh and blood actors who traveled between the kingdoms. That is, the cultural mediators who helped consolidate the empire. All the viceroys, except the first, Antonio de Mendoza, arrived invested with the titles of viceroy, governor, and captain general. The formalization of the viceroyalty was consolidated by Emperor Charles V in the new laws, and with it, the subsidiary court was established. The notion of the viceregal court as a subsidiary court is outlined by Manuel Rodriguez, who understands it as an extension of the imperial court and at the same time as a mirror of the sovereign's own court. If not the royal house itself, we would be making a mistake if we were to draw an institutional distinction between the royal household and court and the viceregal houses and courts. Rodriguez points out that occupying such a high position was in itself a means of incorporation into the sovereign's family, which was not mere rhetoric, but a living reality. The Spanish monarchy, in its polycentric nature, fostered the emergence of viceregal courts. Their members were fundamental. First, to limit the power of the conquistadors and encomenderos, again that word, and then to maintain the transfer, dialogue, and cultural integration between the kingdoms. The creation of viceroyalties resulted in the emergence of viceregal courts that reflected or copied on a smaller scale than Castilian royal court. Since sovereignty resides in the viceroys, as a result of these magistrates representing the royal person, their seats became courts. These viceregal courts recreated the political and social customs and practice of a true royal court. The viceroy's entourage became the center of power and major cultural and ceremonial focus. It is also clear that the viceregal court, despite sharing several similarities with the royal court, also displayed substantial difference that made it unique. The third point of this topic is the movement of viceroys and courts, and we are talking about circulation. So one of these differences was the relocation of the viceroy and his court from New Spain to Peru between the 16th and 17th centuries, a movement that was seen as a promotion due to the geopolitical status of the southern viceroyalty and the assigned salary. We are talking about money here, which reached 3,000 ducats. In the documents, the move is referred to as a promotion, and there is written evidence from Viceroy Luis de Velasco requesting a promotion. Therefore, it can be assumed that quite a few viceroys of New Spain hoped to pursue their political careers in Peru, like first in New Spain and then pass to Peru. There is also evidence that due to age and health issues, Antonio de Mendoza and Martin Enriquez did not wish to move to the southern viceroyalty. However, obeying the king's order, they did so. Spoiler alert, both of them died in Peru. At the beginning of the 17th century, tensions between representatives of the crown and the various authorities of the viceroyalties forced the king to establish a set of regulations for viceroys and their courts who traveled to the kingdoms of the Americas. In this regard, the king established 1. Viceroys who travel from New Spain to Peru had not only the aforementioned right to customs, but could also travel with their entire court. And we are talking about 100 persons. 2, that ship authorities during transfer be subject to the authority of the viceroy, not the captain. 3, the issue of family accompaniment on voyage to New Spain and Peru was significantly restricted beginning on April 11, 1670, when it was ordered by Viceroy could not take their daughters, sons-in-law, and daughters-in-law. 4 laws that were designed for the arrival and return of viceroys between Europe and America may well have influenced the transfer of viceroys between American viceroyalties. That the viceroy, 1, that the viceroy returning from the Indies to this kingdom be provided with lodgings and good passage. 2, that the viceroys and their servants received nothing on the voyage. 3, the viceroys were allowed to carry weapons for their protection and up to 6,000 gold pesos in jewelry.
No tiene escrúpulos.
Hola, ¿nos ayudan para cerrar el micrófono de Omar?
Claro que sí, profesora. Aquí, listo.
Thank you. So, 4, the viceroys of Peru could request up to 8,000 ducats each year for things needed by themselves and their court without paying taxes. A lovely way to be arranged. A curious financial fact is that viceroys' salaries increase when they move from New Spain to Peru. In this section, I focus exclusively on salaries when viceroys move from one viceroyalty to another. Legislation on this matter appeared very late. It wasn't until 1614 that Philip III mandated that the viceroys of Peru receive a salary of 30,000 ducats and those of New Spain only 20,000 ducats. This began to accrue from the day they took office until the day their successor entered service. In addition, they were paid 6 months for the outward journey and 6 months for the return journey. That was, of course, provided the viceroys didn't die. There were 9 viceroys who moved from New Spain to Peru, but there's also another examples. In the 18th century, Peru split into 3 viceroyalties. This one, Peru, New Granada, and Rio de la Plata. There were 2 viceroys who moved from New Spain to New Granada, 1 from Rio de la Plata to Peru, and only 1 from New Granada to Peru. Yeah, that's all. Yes, 4 of them. So, the last topic is circulation, but the other thing, the art. In a few hours ago, we had a talk with Joe's students, and we were talking about the circulation. So thank you again for coming and listening to me. It's similar, but not the same, okay? What about art? Again, during the 300 years of regal history, art circulated through all territories. Research has been conducted on the circulation of art from Europe to the Americas and vice versa, from Asia to the Americas and vice versa. But it was only a few years ago that we began to research the American art that passed between the American viceroyalties. I can recommend two catalogs about circulation of art between viceroyalties. The first from 1998, written by Carlos Duarte, is titled Catalog of Mexican Artistic Works in Venezuela, Hispanic Period. The second, I'm sorry, I'm going talking about me, 2017 master thesis, and is titled Interculturation Among the Viceroyalties of the Americas, the Case of New Spanish Painting in Peru. And it's free online. That's a good thing, I hope. Regarding the new Spanish painting that arrived in Peru in the 16th century, there is only information available through archival sources. That's why you can see the first two images. The lack of signatures and the number of natural disasters suffered, especially by the capital of the Southern Viceroyalty, Lima, seat of the court, influenced the disappearance or difficult identification of the new Spanish works from that period. In this regard, documents located in the General Archives of the Nation of Mexico and Peru reveal a total of 549 images, paintings, during the period from 1572 to 1581 alone. These are a payment letter between the merchants Juan de Alvarado and Hernan Mejia to Luis de Anaya for merchandise, including the new Spanish paintings, the travel permit granted by Viceroy Martin Enriquez to Juan Baez to travel to Peru with his family, carrying 6,000 pesos of merchandise, the travel permit granted by, again, Viceroy Martin Enriquez. Do you remember? This is a time where the trade was free. To Juan de Valdirivalle to travel to Peru, carrying merchandise valued at 3,033 pesos in common gold. And the last document I located from this century was the report compiled by Lorenzo Suarez de Mendoza on the merchandise of Domingo Ortiz, a resident of Lima who was returning to Peru. This information is representative of the boom in the trade or of devotional paintings and luxury items. It can be inferred that the first influx of New Spain paintings to Peru occurred between 1536 and 1634. That is from the beginning of trade relations between the two viceroyalties until the definitive prohibition issued by the king. Regarding a 17th century painting, I should point out that this presence is diminished because it corresponds to the period of effective prohibition of interregal trade decreed by the Spanish monarch to safeguard official trade flows. However, trade existed under different legal forms, such as special permits and exceptions, or through smuggling, like I said before. Documentary evidence I found of paintings from this period is the 1672 registry of the Media Anata, and Spanish task, which includes an inventory of goods and merchandise destined for Peru. Similarly, during the search for works, two paintings from this century were recorded. A Virgin of Guadalupe that could be by Juan Correa, a new Spanish painter, or one of the Arellano brothers, and a panel from the series depicting the life of Saint Ignatius of Loyola. One element worth highlighting about the paintings in their documentary record is that their physical characteristics are known. For example, the different sizes. In the descriptions, they are referred to interchangeable as altar pieces, devotional painting, and in Spanish, they use the word imágenes, like a synonym. Images that you can use to pray the rosary, or simply, and that is very frustrating for the researchers, Mexican image, and that's all. So they are not recorded with signatures or themes, but their value is ranging from the 1.5 pesos to 20 pesos. Regarding 18th century new Spanish painting in the Viceroyalty of Peru, I was fortunate to find a significant number of paintings. This was not the case with the documents. This is completely the opposite. I found paintings, but not documents. I did not locate a single document showing these rows of painting exports. The data offered here was obtained from a search from works in the main religious, museum, and private collection venues in Lima, Cusco, and Cajamarca. These pieces correspond to the second major commercial flow between the viceroyalties, which resumed beginning in 1774, when the crown again allowed trade between the kingdoms and continued until beginning of the 19th century, during the years of the Wars of Independence in the South America. I'm currently working on a catalog of New Spain's painting in other viceroyalties. For those who are interested, I can share the locations where I have found them. In New Granada, now Colombia, they are in the Colonial Museum of Bogotá and the Sanctuary Museum of San Pedro Claver in Cartagena. In Bolivia, they are in the Urioste de Sucre collection. It's like a private collection. And there are series of militant angels. In Spanish is ángeles arcabuceros, but it's the same meaning. They are like a soldiers, but they are angels. You know, angels with guns. Okay, so in the church of Uquía, that is Argentina, in the north of Argentina. And the series of 44 large format paintings produced in Cusco between 1668 and 1684 in the workshop of Basilio Santa Cruz, a Cusco native, which are now in the convent of San Francisco in Chile. Finally, not everything is painting. Not did all art circulate from New Spain. I point out as examples, the 16th century Mexican Christ made of sugarcane pulp, the first one. This is the Lord of the Earthquakes, who arrived in Cusco to become, and that is amazing, the main devotional object in that city, but it's Mexican. And that is a thing that we know it maybe 4 years ago, no more. The origin, because the material of the Christ, you know. Then, as I conclude, I would like to look forward to future avenues of research. The task remains to trace the connections and circulations of Latin America by regal art in order to better understand the contemporary cultural reality in the region. And that's all. Thank you for your attention. We have work to do. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for Paulina about her research process, about her topic, about the relationship between Mexico and Peru and Spain and Peru during the early modern period?
I can get a start.
Yeah.
So we know that art objects are moving from viceroyalty to viceroyalty, and we know that the governors are sometimes moving from viceroyalty to viceroyalty. What do we know about the artists themselves? Were they also kind of migrating from one place to the other?
I was looking for that information, and there is only one artist, and he was a painter from New Spain to Peru in the early 16th century. Then they were not moving, I think, because it's cheaper to send the paintings.
Yeah.
Because if you it's not easy to travel in that from one viceroyalty to other one. First, you need a permission. It could be in the 16th or 18th century, a permission of the viceroy. But during the 17th century, you need the permission by the king himself. So you need to be a very important person in the near court family of the monarch to travel to one to another, or be illegal in another sense, like buy a ship and travel to Peru. It was more common that Peruvians travel illegally, of course, during the 16th century. And the word in Spanish, because there are no translation, is arribata. It's like all these Peruvian people are arriving to Acapulco in February. And that is like they are waiting for the ship that came from Manila, and because they wanted to make some trade, buy some things. But they travel with alcohol, wine, fruits, and maybe silver, but Potosí, from Potosí, silver from Potosí. So art is not very common. It's not common that the artists travel from New Spain to the south, but near the south, inside between Peru and Chile, Peru and New Granada in the late 18th century, it's common to find some registers of names, but maybe 4 or 5, no more. And I am checking that on this time, but maybe in 1, 2, or 3 years we can get some more information. But thank you very much for your question.
Thank you, and thank you for a wonderful talk.
Yes. Another one? No, come on. No?
I would be curious to hear about what other types of objects are
I'm
moving.
sorry.
So not just, or I might have missed it, but not just art, but I'm thinking about like plants or even birds or
How
rocks, jade, things that are not.
how do you call that part in the cows, en la parte de las vacas, los que va abajo, o los zapatos de...
Leather.
Jello hoof.
That's the word?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We need to think that the conquest happened first in New Spain and then in Peru. So we need, Peruvian people need everything. Candles, textiles, but not for art, like
Blankets.
blankets or during the first half of the 16th century, that territory was in war. They didn't have workshops or they even produce anything. So everything came from New Spain. And with the time, they didn't need that type of articles from New Spain because they started to produce it. But that is the second half of the 16th century. And then they bought only a luxury, you know, because in Peru, they didn't have that kind of paintings. They had another one and very beautiful. But if you are a rich people, you want to show that you are rich. So you bought that kind of paintings. Did I answer your question? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
What caused Peru and New Spain to split from Spain?
A lot of things. First, the conquest. Second, the violence of the conquest. And a few hours we were talking about that the violence was worse in Peru than in Spain. And second, maybe is the possibility that don't need the trade with Spain. I think that is the best example of this is New Spain, because think in the map of the world, Mexico, New Spain is in the center of everything. It's the center between Asia and Europe, in the center of South America and the North, and with Asia. So why did they need to trade with Spain? They didn't. But another thing is the Jesuits expulsion. Yeah, that is very symbolic for the students in the 18th century, because it's like think in the teacher or the professor that you love the most, that you admire, and then imagine that the army took them and send them to China or something like that. But today in the 3 a.m. he was in his house, and then they took them and sent them to another part of the world. A lot of them died. So the students of that generation were very irritated with that. Okay, and I don't know. There are a lot of causes, but the most of them are political, you know, and economic. Yeah. Welcome. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
During the time of the prohibition of trade between New Spain and Peru, was there an increased demand for smuggled paintings? Is that something we can know, or?
I didn't find any information about that.
Yeah.
But Mariano Bonialian, he's from Argentina, just wrote a book 2 weeks ago in which he researched in Chile, Peru, and Mexico some documents of that period, but they are new. So maybe in that inventories that he found, we can find something about that. But right now, I think there is no a major what was the word? A major
Demand
of that kind of paintings. I don't think so. Also, Cusco and Lima were cities that produced a lot of that in that centuries.
Right.
In that century. So the needs of the population about religion and because they want to pray were satisfied by Cusco and Lima.
Makes
So
sense.
why do I need Mexican paintings?
Yeah.
Yeah, I am rich, I have a lot of money, but I don't want problems with the crown. So
Right.
I bought Ángel Arcabucero, and that's all.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay. Vicky, acá ya no tenemos preguntas. ¿Tienes preguntas por allá?
Are there questions?
Queridísima, acá por supuesto que siempre hay preguntas.
Es que yo no.
We will ask in English, maybe.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
please.
it's better if we do the questions in English, yeah.
A ver. Vamos a formularla. La voy a hacer primero en castellano. I will ask first in Spanish because I need to share with you our question from Winnie and with Paulina, of course, and after in English for our their
I think, Vicky, I think we have time for 2 questions because it's almost 8
We
here.
have, I would say,
2 questions. Ah, okay, yeah. We have one question from Alberto. Alberto is here. 2 news messages. Yeah, Alberto is priority. So the question of Alberto is, from your investigation, what was the most important viceroyalty for the crown and the political career of viceroys, Peru or Mexico?
That is very easy.
Following the movements of viceroys, was it an upgrade to move from Mexico to Peru or a downgrade? That's the first.
Okay, the first one is easy. During the 17th century was Peru because Potosí was producing silver like a maniac, really. And then when the production down in Potosí, in Mexico, they found sombrerete in Zacatecas. So during the 18th century, the most important viceroyalty was New Spain. So the second question, I'm not sure if I understand well, but I think that the flux, the transit and the travels, obviously were more constant during the 18th century because during the 17th is only smuggling, like illegal traffic. Okay?
Okay, my dear prof.
Ahí les respondo en español. Durante el siglo XVII fue Perú porque producían plata de Potosí y durante el siglo XVIII Nueva España porque la plata venía de Sombrerete en Zacatecas. Obviamente el virreinato más importante va a ser quien te dé más recursos naturales. Sobre los flujos van a ser mayores durante el siglo XVIII y durante el siglo XVII son sobre todo tráfico ilegal. ¿Ok?
Perfecto. Muy bien. Gracias. Aquí dice Alberto, greetings from Peru. Thank you for asking my question. And the second question of Alberto is, the development of the Cusco, Quito, and Lima schools of art has something to do with the prohibition trading between the Viceroyalty of Peru and Mexico.
Okay, I don't think so. Because there is a very natural development in the tradition in that viceroyalty. Of course, if you don't need to buy because your artists are painting, you have the possibilities to make bigger art centers in your country. But even if it wasn't, I think, the hubieras didn't exist in reality. But I think that the prohibition didn't work. Mexican paintings are were more expensive than the paintings that they produce in their own land. So what do you want to buy? how much money do you want to spend? I think is an economic reason and a cultural reason. Although the topics, we are talking that military angels, ángeles arcabuceros, are only made in Cusco. And you found it in Argentina, in Bolivia, in Quito, in Colombia, but you didn't find them in Mexico. Because in Mexico, the artists are not painting like that. So, in Spanish is que no creo. Yo creo que es un proceso económico y cultural porque es más barato comprar en tu centro de producción y vas a tener temas afines a lo que tu población necesita ideológicamente.
Okay.
And that's all?
I think, yeah, I think
Okay.
we're gonna close. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for this
very much,
fascinating
everybody.
talk.
Okay, so thank you very much to Wiña IP Plus, and thank you very much here, and thank you to everything, everybody. So that's all.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
all. I think we'll stick around for a couple minutes in case you have any questions for Paulina.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. See you. Bye.
Thank you, Paulina. Thank you, Joe. Bye-bye. See you next time.
See you next time.
Wonderful.